A young man stood up with nothing but a microphone and courage. Nobody expected he would shake up American campuses and influence millions. But what happened at Berkeley University that night changed everything. For those who don't know Charlie Kirk, here's what you need to know. A 24-year-old who shook American politics. But his story starts much deeper. When Charlie Kirk founded Turning Point USA in 2012 at just 18 years old, he wasn't even on mainstream media's radar. This young man, fresh out of Wheeling High School in Illinois, dropped his plans to attend Harper College and dedicated himself entirely to politics. But he had noticed something. Conservative students in American universities were silent. Why? He asked himself. Why is such a large group afraid to speak their minds? Why do professors only present one-sided views? Why do students with conservative values have to hide themselves? A plan formed in Charlie's mind. He would break this silence. He would go to campuses, debate face-to-face with students. No one would stop him. Until 2016, Turning Point USA was a small organization, a few thousand members, limited budget, big dreams. But Trump's presidential candidacy changed everything. Charlie Kirk suddenly became the young face of the conservative movement. This is where Charlie's story begins. But he didn't know yet that asking this question would make him one of the country's most controversial figures. Charlie didn't know at the time that the events on campuses would make him known not only in conservative circles, but in liberal ones as well. After 2016, everything accelerated. With Trump's election, Charlie Kirk's messages became even stronger. Turning Point USA's budget reached millions. Campus organizations began to be established. Charlie was now speaking not just on social media, but on real campuses, from Arizona State to Michigan, from Florida to California. The same message everywhere. Conservative students, speak up. But liberal students and academics began to react. Don't bring Charlie Kirk to campus. Campaigns were organized, petitions were signed, protests were organized. UC Berkeley, this university, considered the heart of liberal thought, would be Charlie Kirk's first big test. That cold February night in 2019, when Charlie took the stage, he knew he wasn't just going to give a speech, he was going into battle. Students waited in line for hours for the 7 p.m. speech at Wheeler Hall. Some came to support him, others to protest. Security measures were among the most intense in Berkeley's history. But you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. The conference hall was packed. Every seat in the 400-person hall was full. Students were even standing in the aisles. Half the students came to listen to him, half to protest. When Charlie took the microphone, the tension in the hall was so palpable you could hear a pin drop. "Good evening, Berkeley," Charlie said with a calm smile. Mixed reactions came from the hall. Applause, boos, shouts. "I'm going to talk about free speech today," Charlie said calmly, "because this university is where the free speech movement was born in the 1960s. Mario Savio's famous words were spoken here." At that moment, voices rose from the back of the hall. "Fascist! Hate speaker! You didn't come here with freedom, you came with hate speech." Charlie stopped, smiled, and said, "This is exactly what you're proving. If you can call me a fascist, then I'm not a fascist. Because we all know what would happen to those who criticize the leader in real fascist regimes." This moment would become a viral clip watched millions of times. But the chaos in the hall was just beginning. A group of students sitting in the front rows stood up. They had signs that read, "No hate speech." The protesters began walking toward the stage. The "Charlie Kirk go home" chant began. Hundreds of students began chanting rhythmically. Security went on alert. UC Berkeley police positioned themselves at hall entrances. Protesters were also gathering outside. "Shut it down! Shut it down!" could be heard from outside, too. Charlie Kirk, in the midst of all this chaos, did not put down his microphone. He shouted, raising his voice, "By trying to silence me, you're proving exactly what I'm fighting against." This attitude is an attack on free speech itself. A student tried to get on stage. Security stopped them. The hall erupted. Some students wanted to leave. Others were determined to stay. "I didn't come here to spread hate," Charlie continued. "I came to talk about America's values. If you're uncomfortable with these values, what you need to question is not me, but your own beliefs. This is where everything changed." The hall was divided in two. One half was applauding Charlie, the other half was booing. This scene was a living portrait of polarization in American universities. The next day, the Berkeley incidents made national news. CNN ran the headline, "Provocative Speaker Causes Disruption on Campus." Fox News said, "Free speech warrior attacked by leftists." On MSNBC, Rachel Maddow said, "Figures like Charlie Kirk are causing unnecessary polarization on campuses." Tucker Carlson argued the opposite on Fox News. Charlie Kirk is the voice of silenced American youth. Social media exploded. The hashtag Charlie Kirk became trending. Video clips were watched millions of times. Liberal Twitter criticized him while conservative circles defended him. Charlie Kirk was now known not only in conservative circles, but nationwide. After the Berkeley incident, membership applications to Turning Point USA increased by 300%. But this was just the beginning. You won't believe it, but the real big confrontation hadn't come yet. UCLA, this prestigious university in the heart of Los Angeles, was Charlie's next stop. After the Berkeley events, UCLA administration was worried. This time, they were prepared. Security measures were increased, and the media was there too. The 1,000-seat Royce Hall was completely full for the speech. This time, Charlie took a more strategic approach. Instead of speaking directly aggressively, he started with questions. "Do you feel lucky to live in America?" he asked the crowd. Mixed reactions came. "Well, if America is so bad, why are there millions of people around the world who want to immigrate to America?" This question divided the hall in two. Some students applauded while others booed. During his speech, a student sitting in the front row stood up. The young girl shouted in a trembling but determined voice, "You're a fascist! Spreading hate speech is not freedom. You're targeting marginalized communities here." The hall went silent. Everyone was waiting to see what Charlie would say. Cameras turned to him. This moment could be the turning point of his career. Charlie, holding his microphone, approached the student. He said calmly but sharply, "If I were really a fascist, you wouldn't have the freedom to call me a fascist. Right now you're criticizing me, holding your protests, expressing your ideas. This freedom is exactly what I'm defending." This response exploded on social media. It was shared, commented on, and discussed millions of times, but the hall hadn't calmed down yet. Other students also began to raise their voices. "What you say about immigrants is hate speech," shouted another student. Charlie's response was clear and determined. Illegal immigration undermines the rule of law. This is not a matter of hate, it's a matter of law. I support legal immigrants, not illegal immigration. Another student, "What about LGBTQ rights?" "You're targeting them." Charlie, "I'm not targeting anyone, but I have concerns about subjecting children to gender transition surgeries. This is a matter of children's rights." The hall erupted. Arguments began between pro-Charlie and anti-Charlie groups. Security had to intervene. But Charlie continued his speech. "This is the discussion. This is democracy itself. We can have different ideas, but let's debate instead of trying to silence each other." What happened at the University of Florida was completely different. This time, Charlie would take a more aggressive approach. After his Berkeley and UCLA experiences, he now knew what questions he would face. In Florida's hot weather, 2,500 people were waiting for Charlie at the Phillips Center for the Performing Arts. This was his biggest crowd to date. When a student objected, "What you say about gender issues is harmful. You're hurting transgender youth." Charlie's response surprised everyone. "Are you afraid of ideas? Are you afraid to debate? This is exactly what shows the problem. University is where different ideas are debated, not a safe space." This response brought the hall to its feet. While his supporters applauded standing up, his opponents booed. You haven't seen the real bomb explode yet. Kent State University, this campus, known for its historic protest past, was extremely symbolic for Charlie Kirk. This was where 4 students were killed during Vietnam War protests in 1970. Just speaking at Kent State was controversial. The Student Senate had opposed it, but the administration allowed the speech based on free speech principles. 800 people were waiting for Charlie in the Student Center ballroom. The tension in the hall was at its peak. Some students wore T-shirts referring to Kent State history. Never forget May 4th, 1970. Charlie started his speech with a historical reference. This university painfully learned how sacred the right to peaceful protest is. Today we're keeping that spirit alive. During his speech, students questioned his views on gun rights. The Second Amendment is controversial. People are dying. How can you still defend gun rights after Sandy Hook? Shouted a student. Charlie's response was harsh and clear. Our constitutional rights are not controversial. They are the foundation of our freedom. And this freedom also protects your freedom to criticize me right now. The criminals are guilty, not the guns. The hall erupted. Arguments began among students. Some were applauding Charlie, others were booing. Another student stood up. You support Trump, but Trump is threatening democracy. Charlie's response was decisive. You can support or criticize Trump's policies. But no politician is above criticism. This is also democracy. But what was really striking were Charlie's final words. We don't all have to agree. But instead of trying to silence each other, we can debate. This is the lesson to be learned from Kent State's painful history. When different voices are silenced, democracy suffers. This is what democracy is. These words had created a deep silence in the hall. Charlie's use of Kent State's history in his favor had surprised both his supporters and critics. At the end of the speech, standing ovations and protest chants rose simultaneously. Kent State had become the most symbolic stop of Charlie Kirk's campus tours. After these events, the media was divided into 2 camps. While mainstream media characterized Charlie Kirk as provocative and divisive, conservative media promoted him as a brave freedom warrior. New York Times, Charlie Kirk spreading hate speech on campuses. Fox News, young conservative leaders brave stand. Washington Post, rising polarization in universities. Breitbart, Charlie Kirk breaking liberal hegemony. Cable news channels discussed these events for days. Anderson Cooper did a special segment about Charlie Kirk on CNN. Sean Hannity invited him to his studio on Fox News. Social media metrics were surprising. 15 million views of the Berkeley video alone, 8 million shares of the UCLA clip, 20 million reach from Florida speech excerpts. Charlie Kirk was no longer just a political figure, but a pop culture phenomenon. He was parodied on Saturday Night Live. Memes were created. Charlie Kirk Face became one of the internet's most popular formats. But do you know what Charlie Kirk's real success was? He hadn't just made himself famous, he had started an entire movement. After these debates, Charlie Kirk became a figure known not only in conservative circles, but nationwide. Turning Point USA's membership jumped from 80,000 in 2019 to 350,000 in 2021. His social media followers reached millions, 1.8 million on Twitter, 1.2 million on Instagram, 2.5 million followers on TikTok. But most importantly, conservative students on campuses began to speak out. This phenomenon, called the Charlie Kirk effect, changed the political balance in American universities. Conservative student clubs multiplied at Arizona State. Republican student organizations strengthened in Texas. The Conservative Coalition was established in Florida. After Charlie's campus speeches, conservative students' participation in political activities at these universities increased by 400%. Organizations like the Academic Freedom Alliance began using the Charlie Kirk incidents as references in campus freedom debates. Prestigious universities from Harvard to Stanford reviewed their speaker policies. While his supporters saw him as the voice of youth, his critics accused him of normalizing hate speech. Liberal academics defined the Charlie Kirk phenomenon as a new phase of campus culture wars. Professor Timothy Snyder from Yale. Such figures distort the mission of educational institutions. Conservative intellectuals thought differently. Victor Davis Hanson from Stanford, Charlie Kirk became the spokesperson for a silenced generation. So what's the truth? Statistics reveal an interesting picture. On campuses where Charlie Kirk spoke, membership in both conservative and liberal student organizations increased. It was as if polarization had mobilized both sides. The picture that emerged after Charlie Kirk's campus tours was complex. On one hand, silenced conservative voices had gained strength. On the other hand, polarization on campuses had increased. The 2024 elections became a turning point for Charlie Kirk. With Trump's re-election as president, Charlie's campus strategy was vindicated. Turning Point USA played a critical role in mobilizing young voters in swing states. After the election, Charlie Kirk's influence became even more apparent. Entering 2025, he was no longer just an activist, but a young generation strategist for the Republican Party. He took on an advisory role in Trump administration's second term. His influence on campuses continues. In the spring 2025 semester, conservative student groups strengthened even at Ivy League universities like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. Liberal students now face a woke backlash. That UCLA student's question is still valid. Hate speech or free speech? Charlie Kirk's answer is always the same. In a free society, even disturbing ideas must be discussed. Silencing is not the solution. Debating is. Democracy requires uncomfortable conversations. This approach made him a hero for some, a villain for others. But what's certain is, Charlie Kirk made the voice of the young generation heard in American politics. Years that have passed since his first speech at Berkeley, did they show that Charlie Kirk was right, or his critics? The answer to this question may lie in each viewer's own value judgments. A survey conducted in 2023 revealed striking results. 67% of university students in America are in favor of discussing different views on campuses. But 52% of the same students think some ideas should not be expressed on campus. This contradiction lies at the very heart of the Charlie Kirk phenomenon. We want freedom, but limited freedom. As he said in his last speech at Kent State, democracy doesn't require us to agree, but it requires us to listen to each other. Today, this debate that Charlie Kirk started continues. On campuses, on social media, at family dinner tables, in congressional corridors. A student at Harvard says, "After listening to Charlie Kirk, I questioned my views." Another student at USC says, "What he said made me even more liberal." This is Charlie Kirk's real success. He forced people to think, agree or disagree, but think. So what do you think? Should free speech be unlimited, or should it have some boundaries? Everyone must answer this question themselves, because democracy lives with these questions. And Charlie Kirk continues to ask these questions. His influence is still felt entering 2025. Conservative students now don't just vote, they do active politics. Liberal students also establish counter-organizations. The result? Charlie Kirk may not have convinced one person, but he mobilized millions. And maybe that's what really mattered in democracy. Charlie Kirk's story doesn't end here, because the freedom debate never ends. And maybe it shouldn't.